Hey, welcome to Capturing Christianity. I'm Cameron Bertuzzi. I'm joined today by Joe Schmid. He's over at Majesty of Reason. And today we're doing a sort of part two. It's not a part two. We're just going to be doing a whole bunch of these reaction videos to new atheists being irritated by idiots, being irritated by irrationality. That's the title of this video. Richard Dawkins, Irritated by Irrationality. So what we're going to do in this video, Joe, go ahead and say hi.
Hello.
Yeah, so what we're going to do in this video, just like the previous video, is we're just going to play through and then pause at certain key moments and provide some commentary. But this is going to be on the lighter side. It's going to be super chill, super relaxed. Hopefully this one is going to be entertaining, pretty entertaining. So the last video, I was listening back to it this morning, and there wasn't a whole lot in there to like really laugh at or get entertained by. But I'm hoping that this one is going to be a little bit more...
Yeah,
spicy.
we had to make our own entertainment last time, which we did. I think we did well.
Yeah, true. Okay, well, let's get started. I mean, let's go ahead and start rolling. So here we go.
They actually believe that the world is less than 10,000 years old. And because it's the true age of the Earth is 4.6 billion years old, that's a non-trivial error. I've previously compared it to believing that the width of North America is 8 yards.
Steve Fielding, can one be a believer in God as well as a believer in the theory of evolution?
Look, I'm not an expert on these issues whatsoever, and I think people in Australia have different beliefs.
You believe in creationism. So, because I've never heard you state this, but it's a fact, is that you believe in creationism, not evolution. Is that right?
That's correct, but look, each person will come to their own conclusion,
Well,
and not, you know...
Richard, you'd like to respond?
Do you believe the world is less than 10,000 years old?
Look...
Now, do you believe that?
Look, I think that there are a lot of questions in this area, and I think people will come to their own conclusion. I don't want to force people into one way or the other.
You're not being asked to force. You're not being asked to force.
Are you a new Earth creationist or an old Earth creationist?
Yes.
So, which is it, Steve?
You're a young Earth creationist who believes the world is less than 10,000 years old. You're a parliamentarian in Australia who believes the world you live in is less than 10,000 years old.
I didn't say that, by the way. You're saying that I said it was 10,000.
So I noticed in this one that like the audience was really into it. I was actually enjoying. Like they were adding the comedic effect that I like wanted last time. Like imagine if in some of the other clips and it didn't really call for it, but if they just like the audience just randomly started laughing. I feel like Richard. That's probably happened to Richard like every now and then too. It's like the audience just starts laughing at something he said and he wasn't trying to be funny.
Yeah, it's the typical politician thing where it's like people can come to their own conclusions, right? So
yeah.
he's like, what do you believe? He's like,
Oppie impersonation.
I'm not trying to force my views on anyone, right? And it's like, okay, that was pretty funny though.
That's all Richard did. Yeah, he was just like, I think I don't know how much of this was actually like intentional on his part, where because there are clips of him saying that all we need to do is just ridicule these people. So maybe that was like his goal in this, was just to like say that last bit out loud. Like, you're a parliamentarian, I think that was the right term. He's like, you're a politician in Australia who believes that the world is less than 10,000 years old, and like that's all he did, but he didn't like, it was basically just a way of like ridiculing his.
Yeah,
beliefs.
I mean, what I'm really struck by is that he didn't. Like the parliamentarian, whatever his name is, he didn't really answer the question, right? So the question was something like, can you be a believer in God and also believe in evolution? And then he just went on and talked about his own personal beliefs and so on. It's like,
yeah,
what? I mean, what he should have done, he could have avoided all of this embarrassment.
Everybody can come to their own beliefs.
He could have avoided this embarrassment just by saying something like, yeah, of course they're compatible. Like theism, that just says that God exists. God is a perfect, necessary being who's the foundation of everything else. That's perfectly compatible with God creating things in such and such a way where God directs a kind of process of evolution and so on. So, like, there's no... That's really what he should have said. And it would have avoided all of this, like, robotic... People can come to their own conclusions, right? So, like...
He came across to me, whatever his name was, he came across to me as someone who just hadn't really thought deeply about the issue. So like when he got that question, he just sort of defaulted back to something that a politician might
Yeah, and we can't really blame
him.
him, right? Because he's a politician. His work isn't like reading philosophy journals and so on. So
Exactly.
But
exactly, that's kind of my point.
But he probably was reflecting afterwards. He's like, dang it, I should have just talked about the compatibility between them.
Maybe not, though. My guess is that he probably didn't go back and.
He probably wants to forget this.
Okay, maybe or maybe he did think that there's an incompatibility there, and he just didn't want to say that because it was going to come off as like inflammatory or whatever. Like maybe. I wonder how Richard would respond to that. Like, have you seen like his other work? Has he said that Christianity or the biblical worldview is incompatible with evolution? Has he said that?
I'm not sufficiently familiar with his work. I mean, I read it a long while back, and I thought it was low par and not very quality, so I kind of never attended to it again. So
okay, let's continue. Let's keep going through the video. Here we go.
Okay. Now you didn't say that.
Do you believe it?
No, so it is an open question, though.
Look,
is that what you actually believe?
Look, I think that the science today will discover more and more, but I think that most Australians come to a view they either believe that we evolved or we came from creation, and I think that people you can believe whatever they like on that issue. I'm not trying to force that issue onto anyone, Tony.
So where did human beings come from?
Well, you may well ask this guy. He's got firm views on it from that perspective.
In your view, I'm just interested in that before we move on.
Well, as I said, I believe that people, started from being created. But look, there are some other views out there about people evolving from other types of animals.
And as in apes, for example.
Well, look, that's what some believe that. Yeah.
I'm told we've got a question come in, a web question. It's from Cassandra Devine in Victoria. It's to Richard Dawkins. Why do you feel the need to express your views so stridently when they're not always welcome? Isn't it rather like going around to playgrounds and telling children that Santa Claus isn't real?
In modern English vocabulary, it's more or less impossible to use the word atheist without preceding it with the adjective strident. They simply go together. I am not strident. I'm no more strident than anybody else. Now, is it like disillusioning children about Santa Claus? The weird thing is that children manage to grow out of Santa Claus, and for some reason...
Okay, you can pause it there.
Where I get like these clips. He's just like that's all he does. The previous clips that we saw of him, and in this one here, he's just like ridiculing theistic belief or belief in God, Christianity, and like that's like his MO. That's his modus operandi. But was this clip funny to you?
I kind of I kind of liked it. I mean, you could probably cut this part out when you're editing, but no. Let's see. What do we want to comment on for this one?
Okay, yeah. So let's pick up on the part of the question was basically about like, isn't it kind of like telling kids that Santa Claus is not real? Which I think is actually, I think it's a good thing to tell the truth to kids. So with our kids, like we're, at least in our family, we're not doing that. We're telling them the truth as best as we can. But we don't want to spoil it for other kids. So maybe that's kind of like the intuition here is that like, isn't it kind of rude of you or like arrogant or there's something morally wrong with you going and like telling someone that they're wrong? But then there's obvious counterexamples to that, so you got to get more clear on like what the moral intuition is supposed to be. But I don't think you're going to find a plausible moral principle that prevents you from like telling someone the truth, unless there's some kind of like really bad consequence, or if it's just like obviously an action that you couldn't do. There's probably ways of doing that, but those I think are probably going to be like more extreme cases. And I'm doing some like incessant philosophizing, but what are your thoughts on this whole question that was asked and then Richard's response?
Yeah, so I think the question was interesting because it's asking him about there's this kind of comparison made between disabusing people of belief in God or Christianity or whatever, and disabusing children of belief in Santa Claus. Now, to be fair to Dawkins, he was not the one who brought up the comparison to begin with, but he did run with it. And what I want to, like, he went with it, and he's like, oh, well, He said, the weird thing is that children grow out of their belief in Santa Claus. I mean, this is a kind of tension or contradiction that you often see in new atheism. It's a tendency, not everyone, not every new atheist, of course, but a lot of them, where, you'll ask them, hey, what is atheism, or what is your view? And they'll be like, oh, well, I just lack a belief in God, right? I don't positively believe that there is no God. I just lack a belief. It's sort of this non-committal view. But then they'll go around and compare God to like things that we obviously believe don't exist, like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and other sorts of things, and leprechauns and fairies and the great juju up the mountain or whatever. And
you're talking about Hunter's dilemma.
Yeah. Oh, does he? Are you talking about Braxton Hunter?
Yeah, I made a whole video about this, and I got it from him, but I guess you guys came up with the same idea. There's a conflict there. Yeah. They want to say, oh, I just lack a belief, and that's what atheism is. But then they make these silly comparisons, and they obviously think that Santa Claus doesn't exist. So it's like, you've either got to stop ridiculing, or you've got to give up the lack of belief definition. That's the dilemma.
Yeah, that seems right to me. And I mean, of course, we need to be fair to Dawkins here that he was not the one who brought up the comparison to begin with.
Right.
But also, Dawkins has compared it in other contexts where he's the one who brings it up. And moreover, he ran with it here. So he's not like... See, if I was asked that question, I would definitely disentangle belief in God from Santa Claus and so on. But, anyway.
Yeah, and as an agnostic, Joe, I mean, there are so many just brilliant Christian philosophers who, like, it's so silly to say that belief in God is anywhere close to something like belief in Santa or leprechauns or anything like that. It really just shows, like, the ignorance of the person making that comparison, in my view. Like, as an agnostic, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it might depend on that person's epistemic situation, like maybe their concept of God, they were just brought up with this view where it's kind of just like this superhuman intelligence out there that's like, sticking its tendrils.
Well, now you sound like a Thomist.
No, it's like sticking its tendrils out into the world and like manipulating things. Like, if they have that view, well then, yeah, maybe it's more apropos, as it were. It's more appropriate for them to make such comparisons. But like, if you're talking about more sophisticated models of God, like Josh Rasmussen's, where God is the perfect, ultimate, necessarily existent, independent foundation of reality, right? That's certainly different from like this like basically giant brain out there that's manipulating things. So.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep going. Here we go.
The New Testament tells the story of a man who tried to do good things and who began this movement, Christianity, that is still with us today. He must have been an outstanding person, let's face it.
Wait, is this the video where he like throws his head back?
Up. It's this clip.
Is this the part? I can't wait. There were so many points. I just have to say this. There were so many points where I just wanted to like screen grab his face, like his facial reaction. I'm sure that we're going to get a whole lot of that. All right, here we go.
But the beauty of the Psalms, the message behind the parables, doesn't mean that you have to be absolutely wedded to each word. It means that there were messages there that lived through the ages. And I don't have any difficulty with the New Testament at all in that regard. But it doesn't mean that I live my life according to every single chapter of the New Testament.
Let's hear a brief response from Richard Dawkins.
Wait, why didn't it stay there? I have to back up. I have to find it. There it is. Oh, missed it. Oh, missed it again. Yes.
Dude, she's making this point, and she's like, the Psalms and all that stuff, right? And he's like, he's just completely out of it. It's so great.
See, I think we may be misinterpreting him here. I think he's just trying to think about like what her point is trying to be. And
I know.
How he can ridicule it.
I just think it's funny. Even if it's unintentional on his end, it's so glorious. He's
Okay, let's continue. Let's listen to her point and then his response.
But the beauty of the Psalms, the message behind the parables, doesn't mean that you have to be absolutely wedded to each word. It means that there were messages there that lived through the ages. And I don't have any difficulty with the New Testament at all in that regard. But it doesn't mean that I live my life according to every single chapter of the New Testament.
Let's hear a brief response from Richard Dawkins.
The New Testament, if you believe in the New Testament, that God, the all-powerful creator of the universe, couldn't think of a better way to forgive humanity's sins than to have himself put on earth, tortured and executed in atonement for the sins of humanity. What kind of a horrible, depraved notion is that?
I know.
Her face.
Dude, she gets so triggered at this one. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, she did. Let me play and see if there's any more.
No, it
of this.
gets good.
You know, can I just say one thing? You know what disturbs me about this debate, and that is that people should respect other people's views.
Now, well, I'm going to jump in here because is that not a story of sacrifice, and therefore?
Okay, I think it jumped forward, so we can
Yeah.
comment on what just happened first. Okay, yeah. So as a Christian, I feel like I should respond to that, but at the same time, I'm just like, there's a whole wide variety of different views you can have about the atonement and what all that means. And so you can pick on like one specific version, one view of the atonement, and you can say that that's like obviously morally horrendous or whatever. But yeah, it doesn't have any like wide-reaching implications about the truth of Christianity, or even if it's morally horrendous in the first place. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that clip?
I mean, well, I almost wanted to comment on the lady's response where she just looked at the camera.
She didn't respond. Yeah. She didn't respond to him. She was just like, I can't believe how rude he was. That was like,
I think she said something like, what disturbs me about this debate, right, is that we aren't respecting each other's views, something like that. And it's like, firstly, was he really disrespecting her view? I mean, he was just critiquing it as morally, intuitively morally bad. That's what he was doing. It was critiquing it. It wasn't really.
Well, I don't even think he was necessarily critiquing her view, because he was talking about the New Testament, and obviously, like, there's a clarification that we can make there. Is like, by the New Testament, he's talking about one specific version of the atonement. So he's not actually talking about the New Testament simpliciter. He's talking about some particular view that he wants to, make fun of. But so I don't think he was actually making fun of her.
Yeah, and like
or
that
anything,
was
like saying that her
that
view
was the
is
thing
false.
that I also wanted to add. It's like, should we be respecting? Like, okay, I guess it depends on the view, but like, what matters more, respecting the views or respecting the people that hold the views? I mean, usually, not in all circumstances, but like usually, you're going to want to respect more the people that hold the views than the views themselves. I mean, the views themselves might be pernicious or something like that. Like if you have a neo-Nazi or something, like, you definitely shouldn't respect that view. And I mean, if the person is being harmful, then you also shouldn't respect them as well. You should probably lock them up or something like that. But my point is just that disrespecting views isn't in itself bad. There's nothing inherent to that. I guess it just depends on the view, perhaps.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you think it's worth mentioning Alvin Plantinga's Superlapsarianism, his O Felix Culpa paper? Have you read that?
I looked into that a little bit with Hud Hudson and some of what Hud Hudson has done on it, but I haven't read Plantinga himself on it. So, and this was a long while back when I was much more interested in like the problem of evil. Now I work on like models of God and so on. So
yeah. He just, what he does is he argues that in the best, like, of the set of worlds that God could create, that's consistent with his nature, so to speak, the set that contains like the incarnation, the atonement, those like make up the best possible worlds, the best worlds that are feasible for God to create. That's what he argues in this paper. And so on one hand, you've got like Richard Dawkins making this claim about like the incarnation, the atonement is so silly and so like moral garbage. But on the other side, you've got Alvin Plantinga, who's argued that the incarnation, the atonement is like one of the best making features of any possible world there is. So you just got to go do some more research if you're interested in that subject. But let's keep going through the video. Here we go.
Not a story of sacrifice, and therefore something admirable, has something admirable attached to it, which is the opposite of what you suggested.
Do you think it's admirable? Yes. Yeah. You think it's admirable that God actually had himself tortured for the sins of humanity?
That is the Christian view, obviously.
That is the Christian view. If you think that's admirable, you can keep it.
Okay, Tony Burke, first of all.
Yeah, so he did the thing that a lot of these new atheists do. I mean, I don't know exactly who's done it. I think Hitchens did it, but it's definitely, I don't know if Dennett has done it either. But like, God sacrificed himself to himself. That kind of like terminology, that is actually a heresy that's been like rejected for a long time.
Modalism, Patrick.
It's called modalism. Yeah, so it's a heretical Christian doctrine that like nobody holds. Pretty much nobody holds these days. So it's just like it's another one of these things that they like to make fun of, but it's really just like making fun or like singling out one view among all the different views that a Christian might hold, and then saying that like that view is silly, that view is stupid, and then they go the extra step to like maybe hoping that the audience is going to make the jump from like this one view is absurd, and so that has to represent all of Christianity, so then we've got to reject all of Christianity. That seems to be that's kind of like a very common thing I think that goes on.
He might be interpreted as just criticizing via appeal to intuition, a kind of penal substitutionary theory of the atonement. And like, so even if we granted that his criticism succeeded, right, there are lots of other theories of the atonement that don't suffer from such by his light's counterintuitive consequences. I am not sufficiently well versed on the atonement literature to know what defenders of penal substitutionary theory respond to that, so I can't comment on that. But my point is just like, this isn't itself, like they were all almost in agreement that this is the Christian view, but it's like they seem to be working within a kind of rigid penal substitutionary account of the atonement.
Yeah, that's kind of the point that I was making in the previous clip, is that it's, you've got this one single account of the atonement, and it's the penal substitutionary view. But there's defenses of that view, and William Lane Craig is one of the most recent defenders of it. He did a really deep dive in that subject. So if you're interested, go read his work. But I think Alvin Planting he makes some decent points about like, the value of sacrifice and the value of giving yourself as a sacrifice for someone who doesn't even want anything to do with you and doesn't love you at all. And like that actually is like a really, really good state of affairs if you can bring that out or bring that about. It's like, it's good to so here's just a sort of everyday example. It's good to like sacrifice yourself for your friends or for your family. But then think about the goodness of sacrificing yourself for like a group of people that hate you. But like you sacrifice yourself so that they can live. It's like that seems to be even like better. Like that's a step above, because you're like, there's more love going on. It's easy to love your family and friends that love you back. It's harder to love people who hate you, and then you want to sacrifice yourself for them. It's like there are some interesting like moral things that are going on here. So I don't know. I think that's worth mentioning.
Yeah, such debates are beyond my pay grade. So
it's not like Alvin Planting. He uses that as a kind of response to the problem of evil, because he's like, if you have the atonement and the incarnation as like some of the greatest goods, then all the best possible worlds have incarnation and atonement, and you don't have the atonement without like sin and bad stuff going on in the world and suffering. And so he uses it as kind of like a response to that. But I'm using it in this context of like kind of defending the atonement a little bit. So there's a whole lot more going on here, but it's a really fun. It's all kind of, it's not all theology. There's definitely some philosophy in there, but it's interesting stuff. And all right, let's keep going.
I don't think your ridicule of people's faith is much better than what you're criticising. I really don't. But I just stated it. I didn't ridicule it. No, sorry. If you go back over the words you used, once you stated it, you did ridicule it. You did. And if you want to look at the challenges and the conflicts and making a community around the world work together, then the level of respect that so many religions have not shown for each other absolutely needs to be lifted. And your level of respect and tolerance could probably be a bit better too. Let me answer that. I did no more than state the Christian doctrine, and Tony then said, that is the Christian doctrine, isn't it admirable? People said, yes, it's admirable. So how is it disrespectful if I simply state what it is and half the audience think it's admirable? What's disrespectful about stating it? Press rewind, hear your own words. You have changed them.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That was interesting. He was irritated, but I don't think that he like had the foot up in this conversation.
Yeah, I really don't know whether or not he was ridicule. I mean, he there was certainly some sort of ridicule in the tone, but to me it seemed just like an appeal to intuition. I mean, he was trying to state a version of penal substitutionary theory, and then he was trying to appeal to our kind of moral intuitions against that. And so, and of course he did it in a ridiculing tone.
Yeah, and he did. I mean, again, he did say that this is like the Christian view. So he's trying to say, and he also appealed to the audience. The audience was also like, yeah, that's the right view. So he's not like, it is a common view, I suppose, among like, especially the audience. I don't know when this was recorded, but that's why we need more philosophy and more apologetics.
This next clip is interesting. So
okay, I had something else that I wanted to say about that clip. I wanted to agree that I don't think he was being like necessarily over the top rude in this clip, first of all, and then second, like it seems like between the girl and then the previous guy, it's like all that they could say is like, Richard, you're being so rude.
I know.
It's like, stop being so rude, bro. It's like they couldn't respond to what he was saying, so they're just like, what can I say? What can I say? You're being rude. Okay, that's gonna help deflect. So you're being rude. Like that's basically all they were able to do, and that's unfortunate. That's why I think that apologetics is so important.
And good philosophy.
Okay. And good philosophy. All right, let's keep going.
Question is for Professor Dawkins. Considering that atheism cannot possibly have any sense of absolute morality, would it not then be an irrational leap of faith, which atheists themselves so harshly condemn, for an atheist to decide between right and wrong?
Absolute morality, the absolute morality that a religious person might profess would include what? Stoning people for adultery, death for apostasy, punishment for breaking the Sabbath. These are all things which are religiously based absolute moralities. I don't think I want an absolute morality. I think I want a morality that is thought out, reasoned, argued, discussed, and based upon, could almost say, intelligent design. Can we not design our society which has the sort of morality, the sort of society that we want to live in? If you actually look at the moralities that are accepted among modern people, among 21st century people, we don't believe in slavery anymore. We believe in equality of women. We believe in being gentle. We believe in being kind to animals. These are all things which are entirely recent. They have very little basis in biblical or Quranic scripture. They are things that have developed over historical time through a consensus of reasoning, sober discussion, argument, legal theory, political and moral philosophy. These do not come from religion to the extent that you can find the good bits in religious scriptures. You have to cherry pick. You search your way through the Bible or the Quran and you find the occasional verse that is an acceptable profession of morality. And you say, look at that, that's religion. And you leave out all the horrible bits. And you say, oh, we don't believe that anymore. We've grown out of that. Well, of course we've grown out of it. We've grown out of it because of secular moral philosophy and rational discussion.
Tony Bird.
All right. What are your I have a lot of thoughts on this. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So large scale comments. Okay, so the question firstly, I didn't like the way it was posed. It was like, given that naturalism or atheism can't account for morality, don't you have a leap of faith? I mean, he could have asked him just to comment on whether or not he thinks there could be absolute or objective morality under atheism or naturalism. He was almost taking it as a given. But then Dawkins's response was almost like oh, well, it was almost like a tu quoque. It's like, oh, well, you're in no better position than me, because if you base it on religion, then you get all these, problems with the Quran and the Old Testament and so on. So
right.
I guess the way that the question was answered wasn't ideal, and neither was the question itself. So it was a bit rough, but
it just didn't lend to anything good.
Yeah,
lend itself to anything good.
Listen, for the audience, Cameron and I recognize that, this isn't a philosophy seminar. I mean, this is a public, and, this is kind of informal, sort of ish. And, we recognize that these aren't like top-notch thinkers who are we're just giving our comments on what we wish we could change about the state of the public debate, right? So, I mean, yeah, anyway, that's my main thoughts. I mean, I do want to say that I certainly think that there can be objective moral truth under atheism. I think that given what it is to be a human being, we have a kind of intrinsic value or dignity given our very natures. There's something about us. There's something about the nature of suffering. There's something about the nature of our flourishing and languishing conditions that can ground or account for why we have moral value, why we have dignity, and so on. There's something about an infant itself that accounts for why it's wrong to torture an infant. To me, it seems really odd to say that there's some kind of extrinsic fact of the matter that has nothing to do with the very nature of an infant to say it's in virtue of that extrinsic matter that it's wrong. But anyway, that's my view on the matter. But anyway, it was just, like you said, it didn't really lend to good, neither the question nor the answer didn't really lend to good thought.
Yeah, I'm kind of agnostic on the whole moral argument, the traditional version of the moral argument. I'm more open to like the moral knowledge versions of the argument, which I know that you've like interacted with the version that I put up on some video I made a while back, and you made a response video to it, which I'm sorry to say that I didn't actually listen to your response.
So it was so long ago, dude.
Sorry,
that was like in 2019 or 2020 or something. That was a really long.
2005.
2005. I was 5 years old.
2005. Okay, I have a whole lot of thoughts. So Richard, something that you kind of said is that Richard's like response was, "Oh, look at these religious texts. We've got these really bad moral things in these religious texts." I mean, someone could say the same thing. Like, there's definitely some examples of really bad things that have happened under atheistic regimes, like Stalin or Pol Pot. There's definitely so if it works in the one case, maybe you've got to be open to these other cases. So like, I just don't think that's a really good response, is to like point to these little things in the first place. But it seemed to me at the very beginning of this clip, so the questioner's question was about, and I hate to use this distinction because I think there's a better way to put it, but like the question was about moral ontology, and then he answered in the realm of like moral epistemology. So on the ontological side of things, he wanted to know, is atheism compatible? This is the questioner's question. Is atheism compatible with the existence of right and wrong, with things being objectively right and wrong? So moral absolutes is the terminology that he used, I think. But then what Richard does is he takes his glasses off and he goes, here's some examples of your morality. And then he just like, he lists a couple things, which is on the epistemological side of things. It's like, you've come to this, one particular moral belief based on these religious texts, but that's how we come to know that something is moral or immoral. It doesn't have to do with whether or not there is like such a thing as objective right and wrong. So I thought that was an interesting point to make there in response to the question. And then he didn't actually defend moral realism. Like, the question was, again, it was about moral realism. Are there these objective facts about the matter of are there objective moral facts? And he was saying that, what I like to do is I like to think about it. I like to reason through things, and secularism, and that was kind of his response. Let's like get in a room and talk about what's best, what's moral, which I think a lot of religious people do. But the point is that is not actually moral realism. Like, getting in a room and talking doesn't suddenly get you to moral realism. It just doesn't. So I think at best what he could defend would be something like cultural relativism, or maybe even better than that would be ideal observer theory, because these people in a room, like, they've got all these biases, and so if you wanted to take those away, you want to have an ideal observer who can just like sort of objectively look at all the facts, the most reasonable person there could be, and then they are the ones who like decides what's right or wrong, or maybe can see most clearly what's right or wrong. So he may actually be opening himself up, the way that he talked about that, to like a theistic, or at least a theist compatible view of morality. So those were my thoughts. I don't think Richard did a very good job responding to that at all. But
yeah, I mean,
you have some thoughts?
Yeah, I always see this kind of conflation or confusion of moral epistemology and moral ontology on both the theist and atheist side, and it just makes me sad. So just for the audience, like, be clear whenever you're talking about moral arguments or moral realism or really anything having to do with ethics, that you're separating how we come to know and justifiably believe moral truths and moral claims versus what the very nature of such moral claims are, regardless of whether or not we know them. Like what explains them, what grounds them, whether there are such things. Be careful to distinguish these, because I see them conflated so often. So like some atheists, when they're responding to the moral argument in a way that I would certainly not respond, they would say something like, oh, well, I can tell you this evolutionary story of how we got to have empathy for each other and how we're social creatures and so on. And so, that's why we care for each other and that's why we have this moral system. That's just explaining how we come to know that we should be kind to each other, or at least the origins of our coming to know each other. But that's utterly separate from the fact, what explains the fact that we ought not, be super duper rude to each other and go around and chop off the head of kittens and so on. What explains that? Why does reality include such values at all, such truths at all? Is there some kind of ontological basis or foundation or grounding for that? It's utterly irrelevant to that to point out, oh, well, here's this evolutionary story on which we have empathy. That's just irrelevant. So that's on the atheist side. And then sometimes on the theist side, people will say, oh, well, under atheism, we're just these bipedal apes who, these moist robots. We're bipedal apes who evolved. And so we have nothing but a herd morality there. And so there's no objective morality. It's that doesn't entail that there's no objective morality. That just tells us how we got here under atheism. It tells us that we have such a herd morality and how we come to believe it. But it's a separate question as to whether or not there are such facts in reality at all. So I see it on both the atheist and theist side, where there's this confusion between moral epistemology and sometimes just moral origins, the origin story of how we come to have our moral intuitions and so on, from the side of moral ontology. Now, of course, you can get into the evolutionary debunking type arguments, but the argument that they're presenting here was on the ontological side, not the epistemological side. So,
yeah, the terminology, part of the reason why I don't like it is because it's not standard ethical language. So in ethics, I think the more common terms that are used are moral realism. That's what's being used as synonymous with moral ontology. And then for moral epistemology, it would just be sort of applied ethics would be the terminology that's used there. So you could just say, in the realm, not moral realism.
Meta-ethics is the nature of them, basically.
Yeah, so it'd be meta-ethics, meta-ethics and then applied ethics. So those would be sort of the terms that are used there. So if that, I don't know if it's going to help the audience at all to use those terms instead, but I don't know. I think we've said enough on this clip, but I think we should do more of these. And this one was definitely better than the first one. Moment, I have to say.
Looking back.
The bro moment. And then
the lady just looks at the camera like a death stare, and then Dawkins takes off his glasses. Let me tell you.
Yeah, there's definitely some good parts in this one. So, okay, well, the audience, if you guys enjoyed this, then obviously let me know in the comments. And I guess it's not always obvious to comment and let me know what you think. But nevertheless, do so. If you have some thoughts on this episode, if you'd like to see different episodes, hey, if you've got a video that you would like us to react to, then I think that YouTube doesn't allow you to actually post links in the comments. So what you can do is instead just type the title, and then I can go and search it. So if you have a suggestion for a video that we should react to, then type out the title of it in the comments, and then we'll go take a look and see if we can do something like that. But Joe, it's been a pleasure. And we'll see you guys next time.
Peace.
Hey, it's me again. Actually, don't leave yet. I've got something super, super important to tell you. So first of all, you're awesome. You just watched a really, really long video just now, and you're still watching it. That is actually pretty amazing. Secondly, we have literally hundreds of other apologetics related videos for you to watch on our channel. Go check them out. I've interviewed exorcists, hosted debates between Christians and atheists. I've even made response videos to atheists. All of that is available on our channel. Go check it out. Third, I rely on people that see value in my work, people like you that watch videos to the very end, to keep the lights on around here. Literally, this is how I feed my family. So if you see value in the work that I do, please consider supporting this ministry and becoming a patron. Links to that are in the description. Oh, and have I mentioned that Christianity is true?